One of the nice things about incomplete stories or lives that have not reached a place of, say, satisfaction, completion, boredom, comfortability, is that we have a tendency of creating these narratives, these stories that are just not true to life. To give you an example, Romeo and Juliet. Romeo is about, I think, 14 or 13, and Juliet is about 12. So they look at each other, and 10 minutes later, they're in love. Okay, half hour later, they're dead. And we have romanticized that relationship, and we say that they embody the truest of loves. But most of us in this class who are married or have been in relationships, we know that relationships are difficult. Juliet never tells them once in the play, take out the garbage, or wash the dishes. Or why did you look at this woman or that woman differently? Or, the kids need diapers. What's wrong with you? Go out there and get a job. So when I think, have people whose lives are taken away before their story is complete, I have no doubt that many of our artists had a very difficult time getting way to the top. And once they get to the top, you realize you don't like them as much, And so that's one of the things, whether it's a love that didn't have closure, or an artist who didn't live, his or her full life. Surely Tupac had some interesting things to say. He also had some not so interesting things to say. But I think because his life was taken away a little too quickly, we imagine him to be a prophet, which he wasn't. But, who am I to say?
They said he was a prophet, you said?
No, I didn't. I never said that.
Oh,
he wasn't. God forbid. No, absolutely not.
I was clarifying.
Monique, is that you? What are you doing here? Wow. Matt, I got your message. Didn't you send me a message?
Yesterday, no.
On Telegram?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll send you the audios. Yeah. So anyone else before we... Yeah, Stephanie. Your hand went up. Oh.
Oh, yeah. So the rice. Boil the water, add salt, a little bit of oil, add in the rice, boil for 5 minutes, drain, and then in the pan you put sliced
Some oil.
Some sliced potatoes.
Let it come to sizzle, the oil.
Let it sizzle.
And then the potatoes.
Partially cooked rice on top of the potatoes. Cover with a towel.
You can add some water too.
Water.
It makes the rice like fluffy.
So cover with a towel and then like super low heat for an hour.
Yeah, if you want the potatoes to become crispy, an hour is good. Yeah, and it's usually best if you invite a guest. Depending on your orientation, if you're hetero, you should always invite a woman. Once she experiences your cooking, she'll probably just fall in love with you.
I should test run the first couple of times first.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hello. Micah, right? Mackay. Okay, Mackay. All right. Any other questions or comments before we... Yes, Monique. Nothing? Anyone else? Yes, Stephanie.
From the lecture, there was a small part in the lecture where you referenced to Jesus. It was just a small reference, and you said, like Jesus, love everyone. And then afterwards, shortly after that, you said, some people aren't lovable.
Right.
You can't love them. What exactly does that mean?
He said that, or I said that? And so you have two kids or just one?
I have a bunch of godchildren.
No, those are no good. Uh, when you have your first kid, you spend 100% of your time and energy on that one kid. And so when the second kid comes about, there is a shock to the system of the first child. He probably or she says to him or herself that, here my parents have been for the past year and a half. Whenever I say anything to them, they run towards me. But now, if you've seen the movie Baby Boss, when the second child comes in, you realize that about 90% of the parents' attention is not directed towards the second child. And the first child kind of feels abandoned. And if you pay close attention to your own psyche and your own relationship to your children, you realize you love the first one just a bit more. You don't know why. Just a bit more, simply because first, it was your first child. Your love had not yet been contaminated by the politics of life. And you usually have the second one, not because you love children, but because you want the first child to have a companion throughout his or her life. So the second child is usually because of the politics. The third child is absolutely an accident. You just love sex, and before you know it, the woman comes in and says, I'm pregnant. So you don't know what to do. Kill yourself, kill her. So if you read the Gospel of Luke very, very closely, what you realize is that there is a scene where he looks at his disciples and says, you guys have been around me for a while. I have given you whatever I possibly could, and I gave them to you freely. Now go to various places and heal people. And just in case you realize that you're not welcomed, remove the dust of that town from your feet and just leave. And what you need to understand about good, really, really good teachers is that they say conflicting things to us. Love people. At the same time, if you realize that they have ears that don't hear, just leave them. He is with Peter, the rock. At the same time, he tells them you're the embodiment of Satan or the devil. And that's something that you and I have to accept. Because spiritual teachers are no different than Tupac. That there is a part of them that's purely human, and they have flaws very much like the rest of us. But they also have this other part of them that's very inspirational. It's like godly. The only difference is that for me, I am 90% human with all human flaws, kind of disgusting and despicable. 10% of me is reserved for those moments where I just shine. I don't know how it happens. Jesus or Tupac, or Jesus, forget Tupac. He is slightly different in the sense that he is 90% inspiration and 10% human. So the 10% human is when you find him in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he says, Father, that's too much for me. Let this cup pass by me. Or on the cross where he says, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have thou forsaken me? Then he catches himself. So that really is the only difference between someone who is profoundly spiritual like JC, okay, and someone like me. I spend most of my life and most of my mental space thinking about tables and chairs of life. How to pay rent, how to put food on the table, how to take care of the kids. Someone like Jesus, he doesn't have those concerns at all. So he's mostly just saintly or godly. But he doesn't love everyone. He can't. And he shouldn't. It's not good. It's not right. Well, I don't know if he loves you or not. I'm just saying that. Stephanie, all I know is the following. When you get to know anyone too closely, you won't be able to love them as much. You know why I married my wife? I loved her. You know why? I didn't know her. Now, I know her. Do I love her? No. That's what happened. I mean, if you were to really honestly talk about this stuff, that's just the way things are. One of the poets of the medieval age, Dante. You guys know Dante? He's some chap. So, there is a woman that he loves. He goes to Lakeshore. His eyes meet this woman from far away, and he says, "Oh my God, she's my angel. Her name is Beatrice." You know, and somehow he wants to get himself physically very close to this woman, but then he begins to realize, what if I was to walk very close to her and see that she has pimples on her face? She won't be that attractive. What if she has a very high-pitched voice? She won't be that attractive. Maybe I'll ask her about this and that, and she'll just give me some nonsense that when I realize that, you know, she's a bimbo, that won't be very attractive. So he said, he had argued that one of the ways that you protect your love is keep a distance. As long as there is a distance, you won't know the person completely. And as long as you don't know them, you will imagine all sorts of things about them. And that will keep the love going. And that's something we'll talk about tonight when we continue with Hinduism, which is, you know, regular people like us, we're like these tiny mini marts you find in the gas stations. You go in there, you buy a Coke or a candy or a bubble gum. Then you have some people, and mini marts don't really have very many items. That's mostly like someone like me. Then you'll find some people who are like 7-Eleven. They have more stuff inside them. So it's going to take you more time to kind of walk around the aisles, get to know the items, you know. And then you have another group of people who are mostly like Safeway. They have tons of items. You know, at a gas station, you spend maybe about, I don't know, 5 minutes or 5 hours. At a 7-Eleven, maybe a day. At a Safeway, maybe a week. And there are people like the Buddha, like Socrates, like Jesus. They're like a Costco. You know, you need to spend like a few months there to figure out what exactly they have. So the more profound the store, the bigger the store that you walk into, the more you're going to be dazzled, the more you're going to be inspired, the more time you're going to spend. You know, and people are like that. If, for example, you go out with someone, you realize after 2, 3, 4, 5 months, you have reached a plateau, for example, about the relationship, it's because, well, it's a mini-mart. You know, I mean, your husband, he's like a Safeway. That's why you still love him. Just wait until all the aisles have been traveled. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, you know how it is. Yeah. So anyone else before we, Matt?
So Jesus asked
Judas.
Judas to turn him over to the Romans.
Right.
You know, he's like, I'm done with this shit, whatever, cool. Do you think if he hadn't, he would have gotten old and crusty and jaded?
There was a, well,
Like he just saw he was at the peak and he was like, I might as well go now so all the stories are good?
Well, there was a book that came out about 25, 30 years ago. The book is called What If? I don't recommend it. It's a big fat book. It's not really worth your time. But what the book argues is, what if someone like Socrates was never crucified? What if someone like Malcolm X wasn't shot? What if Jesus lived to be an old man? Would we still idolize him? There is a book for those of you who enjoy Jesus and what he represents. The book came out, I don't know, some 40 years ago. It's called the Urantia book. So for those of you who may not know, from the age 12 till about 30, 18 long years, We don't know where he went, what he did. But this book, Iransha, which is about 2,000 pages, kind of tells you what places he went, who he married, how many kids he had. And so some of the mysteries will kind of go away. And the book doesn't suggest that he was in fact crucified. None of the stuff means that just in case you pick up the book and start reading it, you're going to lose your faith. That's a different story. You know, most of literature is just going to give you some information. You have to be at really a wrong place in your life for that information to go inside you and kind of begin to wrestle with your faith and then demolish it. Yeah. Anyone else before we? No one? Is it early? Monique, yes. Oh, I keep forgetting you're just here to experience. Okay. So, if you have no questions, I'll start with the Upanishads. If you have questions, it would be much better. Nothing? So let me just quickly go over. Oh, yes,
I'm sorry.
it's all good. It's all
I
good.
just want to ask you about the absence. Does that affect
The who?
if you're absent?
Uh-huh.
How many absences affect your grade? If I, had to go to the doctor or something like that. Say it like within a few weeks. Does that affect your grade?
Well, you're gonna put your request in an envelope, right?
Yeah, I'm saying 2 or 3 absences.
3 of them.
Yeah.
Oh my God! And
Does it affect?
in that envelope, will you put like additional stuff?
I don't know. I'm at that.
You're fine.
That's okay. Oh, okay. That's all. No, I read that.
We old people need to know stuff.
Old people?
Yeah,
You're 70.
Have surgery, yeah.
70 is an old?
So when you tell us, don't worry about it, we really look at it and don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's true. It is true.
You're like, okay, don't worry about it.
Maybe the two of you
Okay.
should go somewhere, have coffee, and just chit chat a little.
I'm looking at her because she's serious. She's like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
well,
Yeah.
Problems, so I don't know.
Rochelle, you'll be fine. Yeah.
I wanted to speak about the work that I do and like the people that I'm around.
I'm sorry, what? You want to talk about your work?
Well, not necessarily about the work that I do, but like asking an internal question about like people being miserable and reflecting that on you. And like, how do you? I wouldn't say how do you deal with that, because I think I deal with it pretty well. But where does that come from when a person is so miserable or just so unhappy to where they deflect that on you?
So let me tell you a story. Forgive me. So I'll tell you 2 stories. One comes from a movie, the other comes from a cartoon in a newspaper, Sacramento Bee, about 35, 40 years ago. So the cartoon in the paper had it, had it that a man goes to work in the morning, and what he doesn't know is that his wife and him had a disagreement. They began a shouting match, and the boss doesn't really know what to do with all the negative emotions inside him. So he kind of looks at all the people working for him and finds the meekest one and calls him to the office and begins to scream at him. This guy doesn't really know what to do. And so he goes home, his wife asks him, how was your day? And he screams at her. The kid comes home after school and says, "Mom, I'm hungry." And the mom looks at him and screams at him. And the poor kid goes to his bedroom, and the cat, walks towards this kid and meows, and the kid kicks him, or kicks the cat. And so one of the things about human beings is that look, we are not very self-contained animals. We have no choice but to dump the stuff that lives inside us in something. Some people do it. I mean, Picasso had this talent when he was sitting trying to eat his coffee and bagel and coming to realize that this village was bombed by the Nazis. What he does is that because he was very proficient, he was an artist, he grabs a piece of paper and some markers and he begins to draw, sketch. And that's what we have Guernica, If you're an artist, what you usually do is that your art becomes your Jesus Christ. You use your art to kind of express who and what you are. Whether it's piano, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's Mike Tyson. For people like us, if I, for example, had a disagreement with my wife or my kids and I came to class angry, well, I'm going to dump it on you. That's what we do as human beings. Now, if you have a lot of power in life, in other words, if you have chosen your profession very carefully, if you to some extent have a good amount of self-knowledge, what your capacity is, what you're good at, what you're no longer good at, then you pick and choose what exactly it is you want to be dumped on you. If, for example, right now you have to pay for food, for rent, utilities, all those things, that means that you don't really have very much power right now. You don't have a savings account. You live paycheck to paycheck, which means that to some extent, you're being held hostage, not just by your work, not just by capitalism, not just by the American culture, but by the people you're working with. You can't really badmouth them because you'll get terminated. Okay. So that's the position that all of us occupy. That's why it's so important for you to have an extremely huge amount of power in life, so you can kind of figure out where you want to go and why you want to go. Those things. The other part has to do with a movie that came out some years ago with, what's his name? Forrest Whitaker? Yeah, and it was an experiment done at Stanford. It's called The Experiment. So what you have is a very religious man, who has a sick mother, but he doesn't really have very much confidence in himself. He's in fact a loser. That's what he is. And he reads the Bible not because he's a Jesus freak, not because he loves God. It's the only way he can kind of live with himself. Okay? And so Stanford advertises that if anyone is able to do this experiment for a week, we'll give him $1,000. And so he signs up. And so there are 10 people, 5 stand as guards and 5 stand as prisoners. And they want to figure out how well we occupy the roles we play in life. Okay? So sometimes you have presidents on campus or deans who really imagine that the mask that they're wearing as a president or as a dean or as an instructor is really who they are. And so they begin to enforce what ridiculous laws or structures that are in place. Okay. What happens is that those who are chosen to be guards, there comes a point they actually believe that they are guards, and they begin to beat up the prisoners who are not really prisoners. And when you look at their lives, you realize that every single one of the guards has had a miserable life. For the first time, they have been given power. I mean, look at the ICE that's occupying all these places. Okay? About 60% of the people who work for ICE, they are Hispanic. I mean, just think about that for a moment. That's devastating. And who are you locking up? Well, your own people. It's like the story I told you about going to Costco, and instead of walking out with 6 tomatoes in a box, I added like 2 extra ones. And who catches me? An immigrant. And I look at it and say, it's just 2 tomatoes. What do you care? So we fall into these roles and we play them really, 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 really well. So, anyways. Yeah, Matt.
No, it's just thinking of that elephant story.
Oh, elephant, yeah.
Orwell wrote it. He was like a British guard in India, and the villagers came and said, "You have to come on this elephant. It's going crazy out there. We want to shoot the elephant, but it's hard." So they expected him to shoot the elephant. Going out the shoot this poor thing, not. Sorry, that's just.
Yeah. Anyone else before we? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question about flexible morality. What's flexible morality? I didn't really ask the question yet. Wait.
You mean like being a Democrat?
I
I'm just kidding.
What gives someone the ability to have flexible morality?
Okay. I'll tell you a story from Mahatma Gandhi. No, forget Gandhi. Let me just talk about Martin Luther King Jr. for a moment. So he's an African American. He's a preacher. He gives sermons. And one of the differences between giving sermons and giving lectures is that lectures appeal to your intellect. You begin to think about things, whereas sermons don't really much care about what you think and how you think. They kind of just go in straight inside you, and then you begin to feel. So you could say that lectures inspires you to reflect, whereas sermons inspires you to feel. Okay. The strongest part of us as human beings is not your intellectual center, is the emotional center. Okay. That should someone be able to tap into your emotions and bring you to life through the emotional center, you will act. Your intellect will be paralyzed and you will make lots of sacrifices. You will give your money away. It's the thing that all of us in this class have experienced, which is when you fall in love. It's not a reflective thing. It's not an intellectual thing. It's just based on feelings. And as long as you feel, your intellectual capacities are blinded for the most part. Now, so what you have is an African American man who's a preacher, very inspirational, but he also has this, I can't say a flaw in his character, but what he enjoys is women. He's married, he's got kids, but he enjoys women. Okay. Now, one of the reasons, first of all, we don't really talk about the fact that Martin Luther had lots of women around him and he would be intimate with them is because we don't remember Martin Luther for sleeping around. We remember him for being a prophet of his time. Okay. Now, would you say that he has flexible morality? In other words, that there are lots of gray areas. There are things that are right, there are things that are wrong. But once in a while, you find yourself in certain positions in life where the right and the wrong go away, and you kind of play in between, Now, I think someone like Martin Luther, it's okay for him to sleep around. And I'll tell you why. First, and this by no means suggests that having affairs is a good and a right thing to do, but it really, for the most part, depends who you are and what you are and those things. Before you can demonize people having affairs, you really need to have a really, really good understanding about the sex, the function of sex, also the impact that women have on men's psychology. It is profound. Okay. The other aspect of being a man is that If you look at the Old Testament, if you look at the New Testament, if you look at the Quran, if you look at all the sacred traditions that, like literature that comes from the East, Near East, men for the most part have a few screws loose in them. All the people in the New Old Testament, for example, who walk away from society and walk into the desert trying to figure out what God is, where God is, how they can find intimacy with God, are men. We don't find very many women. There is something to be said about being a woman. And if you happen to be familiar with some of the traditions out there and the idea of reincarnation, the highest life you could ever come back to is you having a feminine body, being a woman. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that women are better, especially in the 21st century. So what you have is a man named Martin Luther King Jr. He has no shame about what he does. He doesn't feel guilty about what he does. Or maybe he did, I don't really know. But just in case he was caught the first time, he didn't really much care because he did it again. Just in case he got caught the second time, he didn't much care because he continued to engage in those activities. Martin Luther Jr.'s preoccupation was about justice. About 85-90% of his life revolved around, how do I rescue my own people? How do I make the white man understand a few things? 10% or 20% of the time, he came back down here and he was really just a human being. He was just a man with an avalanche of, or a tsunami of pressure on the inside, and he needed to release that. Now, one of the things you need to understand about sex and the energy of sex being localized in one single human being is the following. When you have a relationship with one person, and you just have sex with that one person, and you just have conversation with that one person, as a man, your energy gets depleted. You just lose vitality. That's just the way things are, okay? And so, for someone like Martin Luther, he can, as you said, use morality in a very flexible way. He can go in and out of worlds without really feeling contaminated. There are some people who can walk into dirt and never get dirty. And he was one of them. I mean, Moses, if the story isn't, historical, but let's just say he's a man, he has found God. He's come to realize that in all human beings lives the image of God, and he has no problem killing the Egyptians. Sometimes it's okay to get rid of people. Some people are just not lovable. And even if they are, you just don't have the patience or the time or the energy to create love inside them. It's just too much. I mean, look, let's just say that I'm your companion and I happen to be an alcoholic. And it's a new relationship. Well, for how long do you think your capacity will allow you to stay with me? Initially, of course, there are lots of hopes and dreams that will keep you intact in the relationship. But little by little, you just get worn out. You get just exhausted. And then eventually you leave. When you leave, what happens to your guilt? It's not there anymore. What happens to your shame? It's not there anymore. That's what happens. When you come to realize, I've tried to help Amir for the past 10 years, he's not helpable. So you just leave. What happens to your morality? Sometimes your morality goes away with experience. And so you pick and choose the people you want to work with very, very closely. Are we? Maybe not? Yeah, Monique.
There's arbitrary, like good and bad, like arbitrary right.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, you're talking about flexible morality. Do you think morality is still open to like interpretation? Do you believe that like
No.
should have?
I think the gray area is only reserved for those who are really, really, really good at what they do. Let me give you an example. If you want to learn how to play the piano, you can't just have a teacher come to your house and teach you how to play the piano, and once in a while you say to your teacher, listen, can I just give you my music? Well, it's your second day at the piano. What are you going to express to your teacher? You're just going to bang on the keys. That's no good. If you have a really, really good teacher, just in case you make that request, that teacher will smack you in the face, rightly so. He says, no, for the first few weeks, you're going to read how to learn notes. For the second to the next few years, you're going to kind of just play these particular scores that I give you. Then after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, your teacher comes to you and says, you know what, I'm going to turn off the lights and I'm going to remove all the sheet music. Now you can improvise. Now what you do is that you bring together 10 years of your experience. And in those experiences, not only have you mastered the way your fingers move, have you mastered the way you use the pedals, okay? You bring all of your experience together. Now you create your own music. Now that's the gray area. And you can only do the gray area because you're so proficient sitting by the piano and playing the instrument. If you're a novice, no one will want to hear you. The only thing you can do is create headaches for people. So, having said that, let's say you're 18. Okay. And you come to class and you raise your hand and you say, well, I just want to like wing life. Well, that's like piano. You know? I mean, forget the first like 5, 10 years of your life because you were drinking, making, wiping your ass, right? And from 12 to 18, that means nothing. Now, let's just say you're an adult, you want to go into life and kind of figure out who and what you are. It's like someone saying, I love the way piano sounds and I want to play it. Well, you want to play life. Well, find a teacher for that. And when you find a really good teacher, there is no gray area. It's just black and white. This is what you do. Okay? And when you become good, then you can go in there and just wing life. And when you make mistakes, you know how to recover quickly. It's a funny thing about this, the people in this culture, especially, you know, when it comes to romantic relationships. You're like 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, and you go into a relationship. What tools do you have? Nothing. You just have like these infantile emotions about you. You know, and you have all these grand ideas about love and who you are, who this other person is, and you make a mess of everything. And you don't even recover. It stays inside you for a long, long time. By the time you're like 30 or 40, you've gone through like 50 people. And then you want to get married. Are you kidding? It's just too much. You know, it's not a bad thing, you know, just in case you're lonely and you want to get into a relationship, just go to someone who's been there, who's done that, and you ask him, so should I get together with so-and-so? You invite him to the house, you check him out, and it's either a yes or a no. That's the end of it. Anyone else? Yeah, Soraya. Locked up?
No. Should they be with their own like type of people, or is it?
Oh no. In China, let's say you like to shop. Let's just say, and let's say I'm your husband. Well, if I was to be like you, both of us would be in the streets after like a few months. You need someone who is a Scrooge. You know.
I feel like those relationships,
They are good.
they're toxic though. They start off toxic.
No.
They don't get along.
You know what?
Person doesn't even care about how they feel. Another person.
Listen, I don't give a shit if you want to buy shoes. You have enough shoes. Just sit your ass home and watch TV or cook or do something. You know, what you're really saying is, I want a man or I want a woman who will just let me do whatever the hell I want to do. So there's no conflict. Relationships are not like that. They don't even function like that.
I don't know if that answered my question.
You need someone to tame you, and I am that person. You need to be domesticated, and there is nothing wrong with that. Look, human beings are like these wild animals that need to be domesticated. That's why we have literature, that's why we have education, that's why we have culture and socialization. Do you have children? Just wait till you have like a dozen of them. You know what you'll do? You'll kick them. You'll hit them. You'll scream at them. That's what we do to domesticate people. I mean, look at how ultimately the grades for this class will be distributed. I have to inject fear inside you. Listen, this is your future, man. You can't just sit for 5 minutes and write a shitty essay. It doesn't work like that. You know, so if you got a lot of free time or you want to have fun with your friends, well, you got to domesticate that. You spend 1 hour with your friends and 5 hours behind the computer writing an essay. That's what you do. And you can walk away saying, well, Amir Sabzvari is an awful instructor. Well, it's only because you just want like the cake and eat it too. It doesn't work like that, man.
So
Sometimes you're the donkey and the man sits on you, and sometimes your husband is a donkey and you sit on him. That's just the way things are. There is no justice in life, there is no fairness in life, there is no equality in life. Some people are just ugly. There isn't much you can do. You guys, you just don't think about things the right way. What is it?
So is that where the yin and yang come in?
like that's what I'm saying.
All right, let's move on. Yeah, Elijah.
So, I guess a little bit piggybacking off of kind of all the things that have been said. So, at one point, the devil was an angel, correct? Or he still is an angel.
Okay,
He was sent out of heaven.
okay.
Did God create the devil to be his opposite, to be his companion?
There was a man, his name was C.S. Lewis. Initially, he was an atheist. He got together with a woman. He fell in love for the first time with this woman. The woman came to realize that he hides behind his lectures, that this is a man who has a lot of doubts, lots of fear, especially fear of intimacy. And then one day she goes and confronts him and then leaves him. A few weeks later, he goes looking for her, comes to realize that she has stage 4 cancer. He has an experience that makes him a Christian of sorts. And then he comes to argue that pain is there really to baptize us. It's not sent down here because of the devil or God or this or that. Just pain by itself has this potency, this tendency to kind of just cleanse you from the inside, where you're willing and able to sacrifice your entire life for another person. C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Screwtape Letters, and it'd be worth your time. It's maybe 100 pages or so. So the story is that this devil is about to retire, and so he's recruiting his nephew. You know, he says, well, I'm going to retire soon. I need someone to take over, and you happen to be a good candidate. And so this tiny little devil asks his uncle, well, who should I deceive then? And he tells him that, listen, people who have faith, leave them alone. People who assume, leave them alone. People who think that they know, leave them alone, because they are doing the devil's work. The people that you need to walk into their life and deceive them, at least try to deceive them, are those who doubt, who think, who reflect, who sit back, observe, are observant and are aware of certain things. And they want to figure things out. Now, you could love Jesus all you want, but I will tell you that the 4 Gospels are filled with contradictions. Okay? Now, you can walk away from the class saying, well, this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about. I love Jesus, he loves me, and that's the end of it. Okay? And which means that when I say those things to someone who is a true believer, they're not going to go home doubting. They're not going to go home reflecting about any of that stuff. They're just going to go to a Facebook page and say, I'm taking this class. I have this horrible instructor who says all these awful things about Christianity. Okay? But someone who happens to be at the right place in their life where these ideas will penetrate, and they go somewhere, they think, and they begin to read and begin to think again. Those are the people you need to be very careful of. If you examine what has happened throughout our human history, we only really have maybe 5 or 10 historical figures who make us feel guilty about the lives that we live. Malcolm X is one, Mahatma Gandhi is another, Muhammad, Buddha, Jesus Christ. These are people who are like at the top of the food chain. They kind of tell us what a true human being looks like, what thinking really looks like, what feeling really looks like, what justice really looks like, what it means to embody this thing called the spirit. Okay? And so we read these people and we embody, at least we try to mimic their ideas because they beautify the way we think about life. They beautified the way we think about ourselves, and we want to embody those things. Okay, so when you talk about the devil, you should think of it this way: the devil is there for very, very specific reasons, and they are there for specific people. If you happen to be at the right place where you can think about things the right way and maybe go through this transformation, the devil will come down just for you. Certain events will happen in your life that will shock your system. That shock will break your habits, the routines of life. You begin to think, you begin to feel. No different than Gilgamesh. I mean, what is Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh is a guy who just has an enormous amount of power and uses that power in the wrong way. The devil comes down and creates events where he falls in love. The devil comes down and now he suffers. He loses his best friend. Then the devil comes in and pushes him towards a spiritual quest. He doesn't come down for me. I'm a nobody. I'm a nothing. I have no capacity, no potential. There is nothing about me that's special or unique. I'm just this four-legged animal waiting to die. Now, if you happen to approach your question within the domain of the Islamic tradition, what you have is God coming down saying to all the angels, bow before the human being and worship him. Every angel out there does except Satan. And God says, well, I told you to bow and worship this human being. Why don't you do it? He says, look, I'm made of fire. He's made of dust. And you have no idea what this dust is capable of doing. This dust will destroy everything he touches. And God says, yeah, you're right, but there are, of the many, many dusts or human beings out there, are few, 5, 6, 10, 15, 20, who are able to transform, make darkness into light. And for that simple reason, it's worth saving human beings. Later on, the name of the devil changed, or Satan changed to Lucifer, which means the bringer of light. You know, and I suppose, and remember, the word devil is Latin from Deo, which means deity or God of sorts. So, anyways, is it, if you go back to our conversation about reincarnation, if you happen to be going out with someone and they happen to be just the wrong person for you, or maybe the right person but at the wrong time, because you need a lot of different components to come together at the right time. If your companion is great but you have no money, it's not going to work out. If you love someone but they happen to have some addictions, it's not going to work out. If they have anger issues, it's not going to work out. It doesn't matter how saintly they may be, it's just not going to work out. You need a lot of different things to come together to make a good soup. Okay? Anyways, I forget my...
So
Yeah.
you said something the other day about rage. You don't want to meet somebody with rage, or rage is not good.
No, rage and anger are good. It depends regarding what. If someone is like bullying my kid, yeah, I'm going to be enraged. I'm going to like wait for them somewhere in a dark alley like Spider-Man and beat the crap out of them. That rage is good. I mean, he's my son. I've invested my life on him, But,
Relationships.
no, romantic ones, no.
I could.
No, and the world is shitty enough. You don't want to go home to have additional shit. No, your home is there it's like a sanctuary, You want to go there for comfort and peace and, some sex, a good movie, some good food. Yeah, no, of course not. Anyone else? No one? That's it? Okay. All right. E, you ready? So let's talk about two different kind of teachers. You sure you don't have any questions? I really don't want to talk about this stuff. Thank God, yes.
Do you believe in the different stages of a romantic relationship? Like,
No.
is it just you're compatible or you're not?
The what?
Is it just you're compatible or you're not?
Well, you have no idea if you're compatible. Yeah, by the time you find out, you're like a world of shit. Look.
How long have you been married?
Too long. Well, you guys don't like honesty?
No, I just, because
Yeah.
I figured she had a question about different stages of relationships. I figured if you've been married for a long time,
Yeah, so listen. Let's say I'm lonely and pathetic, and you're no better. You're lonelier and more pathetic. Okay? So we meet. What does it mean to be lonely and pathetic? It means you're poor. You have a lot of dissatisfaction inside you, you have a lot of needs, and you need someone to satisfy those needs. Lo and behold, God sends you me. And God sends me you. Two pathetic human beings, desperately in need. Here we are. And what happens when you're really, really needy? Well, you fall in love faster. Okay? So the first few weeks, of course, you pretend that you're a saint, I pretend I'm a saint, we are compatible. And then we make this foolish mistake of saying, let's become roommates, or let's see each other quite often, so I can really get to know you, and then get bored. By the time I realize I don't want to be around you, all these emotions are around now. I'm attached to you. I keep thinking about you and I having, we sit together, watch movies. You've watched movies for the past like 2, 3, 4, 5 months or years. And it's really difficult to go home and just sit and watch a movie by yourself. If you and I have had food together for the past like 5, 6, 7, 8 months or years, it's very difficult to go home and just cook for myself and eat alone. It doesn't mean I love you. It just means I hate being by myself. And there is something about us that gets into the routine of things. I like routine. Routine allows me to predict the future. If I go home, you're going to be there. If I go home, you're going to be there. We're going to sit and watch a movie. I'm allowed to know how the future is going to be. If on the other hand, you just broke up with me and I go home, I have no idea what's waiting for me. Am I going to be sad? Am I going to be depressed? Am I going to have an appetite to eat? Do I want to cook? I mean, there are too many unknowns to discover. And eventually I'll just shut the curtains, turn off the lights, and go to bed crying. Okay? Now, given the fact that human beings have this place inside them that's never going to be satisfied, never going to be satisfied. And this is not the 60s or the 20s or the 1800s where relationships are arranged and you get married for political reasons. You marry me because I have 5 cows. Today, when you walk into a relationship, Saraya, you have power to work, you have power to vote, you have power to go to school, you have power to be independent. Which means that should you and I want to get together, it's going to take a long, long time for us to mesh. Not on a superficial, because there comes a point in every relationship that superficiality will go away, and you have to kind of work together at your very core, the very depth of who and what you are. And just in case you got baggage, they're going to come up. These days, no one is compatible with anyone. The best thing you can do is make sure you mind your own business. And that usually takes a long time. When you come home and you really see that I'm in a pissy mood, leave me alone. And when I see you in a pissy mood, I will leave you alone. Which means that I have to be, for the most part, sufficient. I can't walk into any relationship having desperate needs. It doesn't work out that way. There was a Greek poet by the name of Pindar. Have you heard of him? He was a porn star of the Greek world. I mean, intellectually. He had argued that if it wasn't for old age, sickness, and ultimately death, no one would marry. And he argued that marriage is like a bathroom. Those who are in it want to get out, those who are out want to get in. Ask our good friends there. They won't tell it to you, of course, but there are times they said, this was a mistake. Not a lot of time, but sometimes. At least it used to be. Maybe not anymore because they're both like old. In a nice way. Stephanie, you're good. It really takes a long time to figure out whether you're compatible with the person you're with. Hello, Abhi. How are you?
So then, do you stick to the idea, or you should have with somebody?
Sex? Money? If you're a woman, no, listen, if you're a woman and you happen to be hetero, you should only marry for money. And the reason is, listen, at a certain point in your life, your body will demand children. And the moment you have kids, you won't care for your husband. You're only going to care for the well-being of your children. I mean, ask any man and they'll tell you. If you and I are together, you're going to give me a lot of attention. You and I are going to go here and there. All of us, I mean, just you and I together. It's going to be fun. The moment we have kids, you have a special relationship with your child. And I'm going to be dismissed for the most part. And most of our conversation will be revolving around, so listen, Oakland, public schools, they suck. Private school, how much money are we making? So what, how about some romance? Fuck you. How much money do you got? And that's how it is. And if you have 2 kids, you need a minivan. And you can't have a minivan if you make like only a couple $100 a month. It doesn't work that way. I mean, life is expensive. So next time you go out, see if they're educated, they have money, they got parents, and if they have a savings account. And if you can check all the boxes, marry them immediately. Get them drunk and then marry them. Yeah, forget romance. It's no good.
You don't believe in love.
Me? Of course, I am a romantic. You should follow the footsteps of Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde had argued that, which is going to be the topic for tonight's class, maybe, Upanishads, if you ever get there. The only real love you will ever have in your life. And remember, Oscar Wilde is Westerner, so he's going to say things that are very different than Near Easterners and Middle Easterners. If you're on a quest to discover yourself, who you are and what you are on a lifelong romance with yourself. And that's the best romantic relationship you can ever have. Imagine if you want to discover who Stephanie is. What are you going to do? You're going to read books. What's going to happen to him? He becomes irrelevant. Okay? If you want to, for example, discover who you are while you're cooking, well, you're going to focus on the way you cut onions, right? And what happens to him? He becomes irrelevant. And most of the audiobooks that you're going to listen to, it's about you as an African woman in America. That's what you're interested in. You want to figure out who you are. And just in case you want to go on the spiritual quest, well, he can't really help you. It's just you, the Bible. Forget your pastor. He's no good or she's no good. You got to do this on your own. So what's going to happen? It's just you about you. What happens to him? He becomes irrelevant. And just in case he comes to you and says, let's go out to, say, Santa Cruz. No. I don't want to go to Santa Cruz. Going to Santa Cruz means 3 hours of driving. I have to look at you, listen to you, talk to you. I'm not interested. And you realize your vacation really has to do with you, spending time with you. And once that happens, you realize you really don't have much need for other people. You are sufficient unto yourself. Now that's for us in the 21st century. My parents aren't like that. Your parents weren't like that either. So these concepts are relatively new because we are new people and have been wired differently because of our culture. Anyone? Yes. All right, Upanishads. Yes, Vanay.
Well, I was just wondering, I feel like, or I don't know, we can talk about I was wondering, I forgot.
Do you smoke? Good job.
I was at the first thing you just.
Impacts your short memory and long memory. It just makes you a shitty human being. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, what do you think about like how do you pronounce it?
Freuded. Freud.
I learned about him in class one time. I just heard about him that he kind of ridiculous.
Who said that?
It was like an opinion that somebody had written an article about because he was like, I don't know.
One of the flaws of Freud, according to those who are scholars in psychology, is that most of his findings had to do with his work in mental institutes. So no one really takes him seriously because he was just working with crazy people. Okay? But if you read his works very, very closely, you realize this guy is a genius. You know, aside from that, I think anyone who is passionate about anything, it doesn't matter what it is, for about 50, 60 years of their life, that person deserves to be respected. And you shouldn't say bad things about that person. You know, I mean, Mike Tyson was in the ring for like 7 hours a night for most of his young career. I mean, that deserves respect because I'm not willing to sacrifice my life for anything. You know, did Freud have some ridiculous ideas? Yeah. His best student, Carl Jung was devoted to Freud for about 20 years until Freud began to kind of dibble-dabble in certain aspects of human psychology. And Jung walked away from the relationship and he was depressed for the next 10, 15 years. You know, you know, it's like talking about, what's his name? Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow was the father of modern psychology to some extent. A Jew in New York. He gave birth to hierarchy of needs, which is very, very, very important. And he hated his mother. I mean, when his mother died, he rejoiced. He said, my mom is like the devil incarnate. You know, and you sit back and you say, how could a psychologist who should have the key to the human psyche, how to unlock certain parts of the human beings, and if they're damaged, to fix them, how could he have such an awful feeling towards his mom? Because that's, yeah. So, yeah, Freud is a good man. Yeah, Elijah and then Monique.
Wanna go first?
I don't know.
Go ahead then.
So, is it the lack of feelings, or is it the feelings that people have felt that causes them to become like serial killers, like Jeffrey Dahmer?
This is a class, world religions. But it has turned into a Dr. Phil show, and go ahead, sorry.
Well, Jeffrey Dahmer spent a lot of time getting rejected by his mom, and he was sent to live with his grandparents who didn't ever relate to him, so they just sent him out into the field all the time to kill a bunch of animals. Is that like more of like a response to not feeling love? So like, was that like his isolation that caused him those things, or was that like, yeah, what was that?
So I'm not going to answer your question directly, but indirectly. Um Stanford did the research, I don't know, 100 years ago perhaps. It was about two chimps. So one chimp was put in a cage all by himself, was never petted. When it was time to be given food, they simply threw the food at this particular fellow. There was another chimp who lived with a group of chimps in a bigger cage, and he was petted 5 minutes every 6 hours. And when food was served, they would open the cage door, put the food gently in there. And so these baby chimps eventually became these humongous animals, and they were let out. And what they discovered was that the chimp who was left alone and was never petted and food was thrown at him, he picked fights all the time. He was quite violent. The other one, who was much more socialized, petted, was very, very friendly. In fact, at times, that particular chimp would jump to defend other chimps from being bullied from this isolated chimp. And I think human beings are very much the same. We are social animals. I mean, the very fact, go back to what Rochelle had said about people dumping stuff on people. Society is a difficult place to live in. The fact that you guys have to come here 3 nights a week, that's huge. And it's the summertime where we say, summer is your time off from life, for example. And if you happen to be a student, summer is your time from stop being a student, go out there and have a good time. Your parents impose this on you that you should go to school and just finish this up. Or you impose it on yourself. You have a job from 9 to 5. Then you come here. You're exhausted. You have lots of stuff from the past that haunts you. You have unfulfilled dreams. You have all sort of things that live inside you, right? And so when you come to class, it's another imposition. So what do you do with it? Well, you go home, you turn on your Facebook page, and you just write stuff on it. Why? Because life is tough. Because life puts a lot of emotions inside you and you need to get rid of them. And if there is no one listening to you, what's going to happen to you? Well, like the chimp, you're going to go mad. You have friends who know your secrets. Why do you tell them? Why can't you just keep your secrets to yourself? Because it weighs heavily inside you. It burdens you psychologically, emotionally, impacts you physically. So you tell someone. And one of the nice things about just being social is a nice way is that you create friends and then you dump stuff on them. I had friends in Davis. I hadn't talked to them for about maybe 35 years now. All of a sudden I get a call. It's Ahmed from Davis. Why is he calling me? 4 of his main arteries are clogged. He says, I spoke to your brother. He said that he had a triple bypass. I'm going to have a 4-triple bypass. What's going to happen to me? I told him a few things and that was it. I don't need to be his friend. I don't want to be his friend, but it's gossip. It's good gossip. You need people to just dump things on. The trick is to have spent enough time with them so you could categorize that relationship as friendship. And so once in a while you can call them and say, yeah, my woman just dumped me. Can I come stay at your place? And then Julie said, yes, please come. And then you have a brand new relationship.
Where does bitter derive from? Bitter?
Bitterness? Like you're bitter?
You're bitter.
Like bitter? Like food that's bitter?
No, like, where does it derive? No, bitter, like a feeling.
It's just an experience. It's like, Saraya comes here, asks a question, and I say something like stupid, and she just feels a little. This is just an analogy, it's not really real. She feels like disrespected, and, then she leaves the classroom bitterly. I really don't know.
You don't know the answer?
No, who am
Where
I?
derive? You said it's not an experience or some internal something, or it's just come from experience?
I think something, just an event touches you in the wrong way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, Elliot. Okay. E, I've tried. Yes.
Talk about discipline.
The what? Discipline? Romanticism is just being free-spirited. And it feels really, really good. And you can romanticize, I don't know, reading the New Testament. You could romanticize all sorts of things. It's inspirational, it's exciting, it brings you to life. Discipline happens when your passion no longer drives you. You don't really feel like going and seeing the person anymore. But then something happens and your life gets busy, as all of our lives gets busy. And at a certain point you say to yourself, I no longer feel the same way when I go see this person, but I know that there is some value in it. Once the passion goes away, it's really difficult for us to be motivated to do much of anything. And that gets you to this other place where you actually understand the value of the thing that you have. And you no longer have a passionate relationship with it, but what is required now is discipline. You have to kind of summon up your mental prowess and drag your body, put in the car and drive to this or that place. None of us in this class enjoy our jobs, at least not very many of us. But it's the fear of not being able to pay rent. It's the fear of not being able to put food on the table. That fear creates discipline. Even though you partied last night and you were drunk and you were high, and when you wake up, you're just vomiting all over the place. You also know that should you miss work, your boss is not going to be happy. And in this day and age where you're easily disposable, you'll summon up whatever energy you have, you shower, you get clothes, and then you drive yourself to work. That's discipline. And it's rooted in fear, And at a certain point, I think if you exercise enough discipline, it becomes a habit. And then it's the habit that drives you. You don't really want to go there, but because you've been going there for the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you'll continue because of the habit. Now, there comes a point where if you become really, really good at anything, the discipline is there to make you proficient. Once you become proficient, you can walk away from it. I used to play tennis about 10 hours a day in Davis for about 5 years or 6 years, and I want to be a tennis pro. I still have calcium right here, and I can put a nail in there, I won't feel anything. And that's only because initially it was because I fell in love with the sport, with the game. And then I realized if I wanted to be a pro, you just need discipline. So I had a teacher, I stole money, I broke into shops and stole things and sold them to pay for the teacher, and you're willing to do all sorts of things. And I'm from the Middle East, so stealing is permissible for us. Not so much for you guys because you're Christians and you're Americans, you're all about justice and fairness and all that. So, and once you become good at something, it stays with you. It's not going to leave you. I haven't played tennis for over maybe 20 years, but I have no doubt that in 5 minutes time, if I go on the court, I can be as good, well, not as good, but I can be good the way I was in my 20s. Sometimes you have discipline because you respect something or someone. Sometimes you have discipline because you love someone or something. And sometimes you fear them. And respect and fear are siblings. When you are in love, you don't need discipline because love just carries you. Right now, if you have to read books about how to forgive, you have to read books about how to be compassionate, how to be patient. When you're in love, all those things are like free gifts. When love goes away, then you need to read books about how to cultivate compassion, generosity. Discipline is really, really tough because that's when you're tested, and most of us fail. So.
Is love or, say, caring for somebody, care for somebody break up? Is that just feelings of love that have never face-to-face?
Let's say you're not in a relationship and you break up with me, but you still want to care for me because you feel guilty for breaking up with me and because you see me sad. Yeah, forget it. Just walk away. I mean, there is nothing wrong with feeling guilty. The real reason why you feel guilty really is because you have caused pain in me. And that's something that Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the 16th century or 17th century French philosopher, had argued. There is something about us. There is something about us that feels shame and guilt. And it's something that the Greeks had argued some 3,000 years ago. That, forget that. So yeah. So because of the pain you have caused me, you have no choice but to feel responsible for the pain that you have created. You just have to wait until the storm passes by. And then you can just walk away and get into a different relationship. Yeah. Just in case you have caused me pain and you want to go out with Matt, just go to places that I usually don't frequent so I don't see you. Because then I'll feel bitter. And then I may even be angry, borderline rage. I will kind of wait for you at your house.
Does that have bitter turns into rage? What you just described?
Yeah, if it's him, yeah.
Angry and turn into-
Yeah,
So that's kind of how it goes.
yeah.
So bitter does fall in the range of anger and rage and all that stuff.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, it only takes a couple of things for me to say for someone to become really upset and then wait for me at the parking lot. It doesn't take very much. Especially there.
Oh, because I thought bitter was something like you regret, like, you grow old and be bitter because you regret something.
Well, when you grow old, you have no choice but to be bitter. I mean, bitter, 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 bitter. And the other people in this class, soon to be bitter. I mean, because you make a lot of mistakes in life. Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think youth is wasted on young people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't have,
I mean, look at them.
I know.
Yeah. It's awful.
I mean,
Waste.
That's not a bad thing. I'm just
No, it's a
saying,
bad thing. It's bad.
Usually it is wasted on young people because when you get older, things start hurting and you realize, I can't move.
Oh, don't talk to them. They won't even listen to you.
I know, they're not listening.
Anyone else? Yes, Matt.
Yeah, you said it the other day, and then you said it earlier, that when you have children, you love the children more than your partner.
For the woman, not the man.
Not for the man.
Yeah. Unless the kids gravitate towards the man. And it happens sometimes, but oftentimes it's the bond between the mother and the children.
The question I had, though, is if you were to ever be asked, like, hey, when we have kids, are you going to keep loving me as much, or are you going to love the kids more? Do you lie and say, no, I'll keep loving you as much? Or do you tell the truth and say, of course I'm going to love the kids more than you?
You mean if the man asks a woman?
The woman asks the man.
First of all, that question will never come up unless you've had kids and you've gone through the episodes and now you speak with experience and you threaten the woman. If you have kids, if I give you kids, you will continue to love me. If you don't, I'll beat the crap out of you. And what? Right? I mean, that's a statement that's rooted in experience. Most often, when it's like your first child, you're not going to say, woman, you and I need to have a serious conversation tonight. So when this kid comes out of your vagina, who are you going to love more, me or you? Look, eventually you as the man, you become irrelevant. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it takes a long time for the kids to gravitate towards you. Girls, about maybe 10, 11, 12, to actually look at you and say, oh, you're my dad after all. So listen, how you doing? Boys are a little different. But for the most part, you're the outsider. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sure, you'll feel bad and jealous and all that. You'll try to somehow find some way to connect with your kids as the man, but it's a little tricky.
Little girls love their dads.
Yeah, when they're like later on. Like, you know, when they're like 10, 11, 12. Yeah. I mean, I may be right. Anyone else? Stephanie, yes. Vivi? By the way, most of the things I say are wrong. So, yeah.
You they come at a time when everyone feels.
I think at least in my head, the way I look at this in a very organic way is there is this progression that we go through that for the first few years of your life, you're very physical. You play soccer, you play tennis, you ride your bicycle. And everything really has to do with you being outside in the park and playing around, you know. Then you go out there somewhere, you see the opposite sex, and you may be like 12 or 13 or 14, and for the first time you realize that you're having an experience that doesn't really much have to do with your physical body, in the sense that somehow you want to emotionally satisfy yourself, and the only way you can do it is by having this other person around you, which we call love and infatuation and those things. Of course, before you get there, your parents will send you to school. That's the abdomen area. You'll accomplish your social obligations, parental obligations. And then you go out there and you make yourself a life. You know, you buy a house, you save money, you buy a car, you get into a relationship, you have children. And then at a certain point, you look at your life. And remember, these traditions are mostly created by men, okay? And after a certain while, you look at your life and you say, for the first 10, 12 years of my life, it was just going to the park and having a good time with my friends. And then from the age 12 till about maybe like 20, 25, I went to school. And then from the age 25, I got married and I take care of my wife, my parents, my children till about 50 or 60. And now I look at my life and I realize I just gave my life away to other things, other people. And I kind of feel like there is this hole inside me, and I don't know why it's there, and I don't know when it came, but I feel unhappy. I feel dissatisfied. And at this stage, what you do is, if you were 12 and you were bitter, and you were jealous because your neighbor's kid had a bike and you didn't, you know, you go to your father and say, I want a bike. If at a certain point your parents look at you and say, you know, Joe is gone to school, he has his master's, it's your time now, go to school and do this and that. And so you realize that everything you've ever wanted to do in life, there had been a GPS, you know. And then you say, is there anyone who can kind of tell me who I am without my wife or my husband or my kids, without my job, my profession, my education, my background, without my history? Who am I at the deeper level of what it means to be human? And then that's where the Upanishads come in. And you go on a quest, and the nature of your questions begin to change. You know, you no longer ask what it means to be African American. You no longer ask what it means to be African or what it means to be American. You just ask, what does it mean to be human? You know, you don't care much about your nationality, you don't care much about your race, you don't really much care about your gender or your religion or faith. It's mostly like this deeper question, what exactly does it mean to be human? Now, you realize most of the people who occupy our lives, really, they're about the tables and chairs of life. Most people are occupied about their grades. I mean, most of the questions that initially that when we come to class, the first like 10 minutes, how can I write a better essay? Will I get an A or a B or a C? What do I need to do to pass this class? Then you play with these ideas, ridiculous ideas for a little bit, or questions, and then comes a different set of questions. What do I do with romantic relationships? What do I do with education? What do I do with big life decisions, for example? Another raises their hand and says, listen, I've gone through all those things, but I've come to a place where I'm beginning to ask questions that nobody really asks and nobody really has answers to. Where do I go for those? That's the stage of Upanishads. That's where you find a teacher. I mean, look, the idea, the Upanishad meaning sitting at the feet of your teacher. If you want $10 from your dad, well, you have to be an idiot to go to him and demand in a very disrespectful, rude way. What you do psychologically, emotionally, you kind of, you have a certain facial expression where you go to your father and he looks at you and feels bad and feels sorry for you. And you say, Dad, can I get $10? He says, what do you want $10 for? My friends want to go have ice cream and I just want to go with them. And what you're doing is you kind of humble yourself before your father because you know he has power, because you know he has things that he can give you to satisfy your needs. And it happens to me all the time. End of the semester comes about, someone hasn't done any work for the class. Now they knock on my office door, they come in and they say, listen, I'm really, really sorry. My dog died, my mom died, my dad died, I resurrected. Is there a way I can pass this class? And what they're doing is they're also sitting at your feet. They're like begging. Okay. So what Upanishad really is about is every human being at a certain point in their life, they beg for something. And for you to have that begging go away, that need to be satisfied, you really need to humble yourself. And this act of humility, it happens naturally because you are in need. And need creates an emotional relationship with you and the thing that you need. If you desperately, last week, I saw our good friends in the back. Their car hood was open. The battery had run out. Okay? And they're waiting. And they're kind of meek and nice, really nice people. They're not asking anyone. They're not on the phone begging for AAA to come their way. And there is just something about their body language that shouts, help. Now, if you happen to be receptive, and if you happen to kind of remember what it means for you to have been stranded, you kind of say, okay, is there something I can do for you? Okay. And so anytime you need help, you look for the right people to help you in those areas. Upanishads basically means you've come to this mature place in life where what you are looking for is spiritual nourishment. You don't want physical nourishment, you don't want emotional nourishment, you don't want intellectual nourishment. And by emotional, I mean like fear is an emotion. Fear of not passing a class that has to do with your emotions connected to physical life. Spiritual nourishment means, and spiritual emotions and reflection has to do with things that you can't see or touch or taste. It has nothing to do with your physical life, which makes it tricky because you have no idea if you should trust your teacher or not. Is he going to be a David Koresh? Is it going to be a Bundy of sorts? Is it going to be a Rajneesh? Am I going to be exploited for my money, for my body, for this, for that? The other areas of life, you can, to some extent, see things, feel things, understand things, but this is very, very different. Now, does that? Yes.
I forgot my question. I was too focused.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Elliot, it's good to see you.
I've been here.
Go ahead.
You say you stopped loving your wife after you get know them. Does that ever happen with your kids or your parents?
Yes. Yeah, I look. When the kids come out of a woman or a man these days, it's not very difficult to love them. Something comes out, they're like a kitten or a chick. Very, very easy to love them. Okay? What you do with that love is a different story. I love my kids, but how do I protect them from a world that's so vicious? And you realize your love is not enough. And sometimes, and remember, love has different faces. Sometimes you love your kids by spanking them. by punching them, by hugging them, by giving them timeouts, by not giving them what they want. Okay? So the nature of your love changes. It's not as romantic as you may think it to be. Now, as you get older, something really interesting happens to you, as it happens to me quite often, which is I'm getting older, I'm getting sicker, and I say to myself, if I was to be really, really mean to my kids, they're gonna like just throw me in a nursing home, and they'll come visit me maybe once every like 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And that's too painful. So what I need to do, I need to be very careful. You know, I'll spank them for 5 minutes, love them for 25 minutes. And hopefully, when I get sick, they'll say, Dad, won't you just come and stay with us? So, so you become future-oriented with your kids. I when I did my triple bypass, I had to go somewhere and make a will. You know, when I die, who gets what? And I didn't do it because I love my wife. I didn't do it because I love my kids. I just didn't want the government to come in and just meddle with the things I've accumulated over the years. And out of respect, I don't want my wife to be homeless, and I don't want my kids to go through a difficult time. Now, whether or not they have the brains to know what to do with the money, that's a different story. You can love people, but you can love their future. And for them to have a relatively good future, you have to be profoundly political. Yeah. Anyone else?
If say, life is suffering, or happiness, it's just a distraction from boredom, then as someone, or I guess just as a professor, why do you insist on digging the hole deeper with knowledge? Why don't you just come down and roll in the mud with us and not get drunk or something? You're wanting for more knowledge stronger than losing it.
Well, I don't drink, and I don't smoke. So there is one of the things about the ideas you've talked about for the past few weeks in this class, they've been quite dark and gloomy. And you may think that these ideas are my ideas, but they're not. I mean, when you look at the New Testament, it's really quite dark and gloomy. When you look at the teachings of the Buddha, that's also quite gloomy. When you look at the Quran and what Muhammad did with his life, that's also pretty sad and gloomy. Now, the difference between the way they struggled in life and with life and the way we do it is that sometimes you struggle and you suffer in a very creative way. Sometimes you suffer and you're miserable, but you don't know what to do with it. I have been on this stage for about 30 some odd years, and most of the dark and gloomy ideas I share with the students, I think I do it in a very creative way. I like what I do. And I think I'm relatively okay with who and what I am and the way I present ideas. And that eases the suffering. When I go home and when my wife asks how was class, I don't say much. In fact, I don't talk about my classes to anybody. I don't have issues to talk about. Whatever issues I may have, I express them in the 2-3 hours of class, and then I go home. Now, when I was your age and when I had a teacher for about 10 years, that was a different story. There were many times I wanted to end my life because these ideas were like an avalanche. They were heavy, they were dark, and as any normal human being, you want power over life. You want to know how your school is going to go. You want to know if you're going to end up like your brother, a doctor, like your sister, a doctor. You want to figure out if you're ever going to get married, if anyone's ever going to like you the way you are. But when you're sad and mopey and depressed, You have no access to the future that's bright and lively, you know. So life is all about struggle. The question is, do you have the power to make your struggles creative? You know, you may be a little too young for this, or maybe not. One of the nice things that will ever happen when you're in a romantic relationship is that sometimes you have disagreements that turn into fights where you don't see each other for a couple of days, and then you get together and you have the best sex. And sex happens to be this valve that gets rid of all the poison that lives inside you. And everything goes away. At least, you know, for a few minutes. You know. And you could say that's how you get rid of poison in a very creative, passionate way. I mean, if I was to make Jesus very, very human, he's a complete idiot. Right? I mean, 2,000 years ago, who leaves his parents? Nobody leaves their parents at the age of 12. I mean, you're talking about Judea, you're talking about Nazareth, you're talking about different culture, tradition. No one says, Dad, I'm going to go explore the world. No one does that. You have to be nuts to those things. You respect your parents, you respect your culture, you respect your religion. This guy doesn't do any of that stuff. Okay? So there is, at the outset, you got to understand that this is a weirdo. He's a weird kid. He doesn't fit in. There is something wrong with him. And he goes away for 18 years. Who does that? Nobody does that. Okay? This is a guy who can make friends. This is a guy who can really love his parents. This is a guy, when his parents have lost him in the Gospel of Luke, I think. Okay? He says, why were you guys worried? You should have known I've been in my father's house. Well, I'm your goddamn mom. I worry about you. Well, shit, don't worry. What's wrong with you? Grow up. This is not a normal kid. Okay? He doesn't fit in life. He doesn't fit in his town. So he goes away and he comes back after 18 years. What does he tell us? Life is no good. Marriage is no good. I've not come here to bring peace. I'm here to make sure that the mother fights with the daughter. The son fights with the father. Their friends begin to fight. This is an unhappy human being. Now, how does he express his unhappiness? By talking to us with these grand ideas. That's creative. A guy who doesn't feel like he fits in, but comes up with magic. And look at this, 2,000 years later, over 1 billion Christians on this planet. Who are they following? A miserable little creature named Jesus Christ. As long as you can be very creative and live with your misery in a very creative way, you'll be fine. I mean, really, I work with the hospice program and child life services. Hospice is about people who are close to death. They're very, very sick, you know. And child life services are also the same, that there are these kids who haven't had enough time to live, but, you know, they're suffering from this incurable disease. Now, kids can handle sickness and death in ways that adults can. But when you get to adults, what happens with some adults when they have come to the stage of acceptance, I am going to die, I've made peace with life, I've made peace with God, I've made peace with death, I can go at any time. And when you begin to sit with them and talk with them, you realize they're the most creative, they're the most insightful, and you are supposed to like calm them, but instead they begin to calm you. And that's how they cope with life, with sickness, with death, with the unknown that awaits them in afterlife, if there is such a thing. You know? And I think that's the beauty of philosophy and just these ideas in general. They teach you how to be creative with the most difficult aspects of life. I mean, relationships are tough. They're really, really tough. You just need to learn how to laugh. When your wife gets angry because you haven't taken out the garbage. I mean, you don't have to laugh out loud for her to see you. You just laugh in your belly. Ah, she's so stupid. Anyone else? Anything? Joyce? Yeah. Arranged? No, I fell in love. No, I wasn't. They tried, my poor parents. Just so.
How did you stay in love?
I'm sorry?
How did you stay there?
Stay in love?
Yes.
Nobody stays in love. Why the hell would you want to stay in love? I mean, imagine like you're 90 and you love your husband and you looked at him and he looked at you and all of a sudden you said, you want to go to the back seat of a car? At the age of 90, you'd probably have a stroke and die. Yeah, I mean, unless you just happen to be in a very miserable like situation where you want to go in the back seat and just die, literally. Anyone else? I don't think you guys knew what you signed up for, but here we are. Makai, anything? My apologies. I really prepared lectures for this class. Yeah, Makai. Yeah.
Somebody asked about discipline earlier. Can discipline be taught?
I'll tell you a story. It's a great question. And I think as we talked about earlier, you can either love someone and discipline just is imposed upon you. You could fear someone. If you know that your father is going to come home drunk and you know if he sees any dirty place in the sink, he's going to go nuts. That fear disciplines you, that despite your desire to sit on the sofa and relax or watch TV, you simply go into the kitchen and wash your dishes, you know. So discipline can come in a variety of different ways. There is a book, I think you can find it on Amazon for maybe a penny or so. It's called A Knight in a Rusty Armor. There was a radio show host in San Francisco. He retired and wrote this book. It's about this knight. And you know what a knight is. A knight is someone who's been knighted by the king, who for the longest time in our history was like a Christ on the throne. So the knight goes into the battlefield, kills a few people, comes home, removes his armor, washes himself, and just has fun with the wife and with the kids. At a certain point, he says to himself, you know, I go to the battlefield for about 5, 10, 15, 20 hours, then I have to come home, remove the armor, I take a nap for 10 minutes, and then go back into the field. Why should I do that? Let me just sleep with my armor on, and I'll just put, you know, the hose inside my armor. I'll just go like this, and I'll wash some of the dirt off. And there comes a point where the nuts and bolts of the armor have been rusted. And he wants to remove the armor once in a while, but he can't because of the rust. And then he just kind of gives up. One day his wife comes to him and says, listen, I haven't seen your face. You know, I've seen your eyes because the visor can go up, but even the visor refused to go up anymore. He says, I haven't seen your face, I haven't seen your eyes. It's like hugging a RoboCop, if you've seen the movie. You know, the kids want to hug you, but you're just in this piece of metal all the time. Remove the armor. He says, no. I mean, do you know who you're talking to? I am the special knight of the king. I am the way I am, you know. And at a certain point, the woman goes to this knight and says, if you don't remove the armor by next week, I will leave you and I'll take the kids. And thinking that he's great and, you know, his wife would not dare leave him, he doesn't really much listen to her. And so he comes back next week and the wife is gone, the kids are gone, and all of their stuff is gone. And he distracts himself by going to the battlefield, killing some people, but he comes home and there's no one there, and there's no noise there, no sounds. And for those of us in this class who've been married and we've just gotten used to the noise of the kids and the busyness of life, when the kids are not there, when the wife isn't there, it's as if something about your life is missing, you know. And so there comes a point where this man, this knight who used to imagine himself to be great, is reduced to nothing because he has lost everything. He sits and he tries to get the armor off, but he can't. Everything is just rusted. And he sits and he's sad and he's lonely and he's depressed. He's really, really depressed. And when you're sad and depressed, you become very, very religious. Religious in the sense that you begin to seek for help. And you become very devotional in the sense that your speech has a lot of emotions in it. You're very intense. You know, you said, if there is a God, I want God to send me someone knocking on the door, breaking the door, coming with like a chisel and a hammer and just removing this armor from me so I can go looking for my wife. And eventually God listens. So that's one of the things about depression. There's a stage where you really, really like cry and you begin to worship and you begin to plead for some help coming your way. So eventually his cries are heard and Merlin comes in, the magician. Merlin comes in, looks at this knight and says, what do you want? I want this armor to come off. Why? I thought I was somebody and I came to realize I'm nobody and I want to remove this mask, but I can't. I need help. He says, okay, what I'm going to do for you, I'm going to, before removing this armor, I'm going to send you to this room. It's called the room of silence. And you're going to sit there for a long time. Now, one of the things about the room of silence is all of us in this class have a past. And we go to a therapist because we want the past to be silenced. We want the past to be removed completely. So we're not haunted by the traumas. And what this book suggests, at least for me, is that you have to sit. And it's something that we're not really used to. It's really difficult for us to just sit. And initially, of course, you're going to kind of play with the imaginations, with the stories, with like how your future is going to be. There's going to come a time where you're exhausted because you keep living in the future, but it's really not real. So you're pushed back into your body, you're pushed back into your past, and you have all this noise about your dad, about your mom, about all the things you've done in the past that's been wrong. And you just have a very flawed life, you know. If you're able to live in this room of silence for a while, everything will quiet down. You won't feel anything. Your past will no longer have any power over you. You know, your future has no power over you. You're actually able to sit quietly with yourself and all of your flaws, and you're able to accept them, everything as everything has happened. And then Merlin all of a sudden comes in and transports you into the house of wisdom, where now you gain insights from your past. And one of the things that silence does is that it allows you to look at your past objectively, to examine it, to take notes on it, to learn from it, to understand it, and then to make appropriate changes. And when he moves into the house of insight and wisdom, the armor falls off. Now, if the word personality, it's Latin, persona, which means the masks that we wear. You wear the mask of being an African American, you wear the mask of 200 years of certain events in the American culture, you wear the mask of being a 27-year-old African American in Oakland with the Oakland culture, you wear the mask of being a student and having all these like pieces of advertisement living inside you, given to you by the system, and imagining you are these pieces of advertisement. And these are like these traumatic experiences. You think that this is who you are when in fact you're not. And the spiritual quest begins when you're pushed into the house of silence. And the way it happens is when you encounter a teacher and all of a sudden something about you just quiets down. You know, you want to talk about your past, but something about you says, no, just keep your mouth shut. You know, there's a part of you that wants to become angry, but something about you says, in the presence of this, like Jesus Christ, just shut your mouth. And then little by little, wisdom is given to you. Discipline. Because the noise wants to come in and you say, no, go away. I'm not going to let you. It's tough. It takes a long time. Because eventually discipline needs to become a habit. And for anything to become a habit, you need to do it over and over and over again. Yeah. Anyone? Yes, Stephanie, you had? No? You did? Yes, no? Anyone else? Yeah. No, go ahead, it's okay. 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 Is it 8:30?
8.
Okay.
Almost 8.
Okay. So we've talked about this before. Let's talk about it again. Just in case any of you, like all of a sudden have a question, just raise your hand and ask it. It's okay. There are two kinds of teachers. One that in Arabic we call snatched. The other is someone very much like us, has a regular life, but all of a sudden there's a hiccup in the way they perceive themselves, perceive life, live life, and they go through their midlife crisis and they go on the spiritual quest. Okay. Now, the teacher you want to be around is the second type. You want to be around someone like Moses, not someone like Jesus. Jesus doesn't really understand what commoners really go through, so he gives them hippie ideas that we just don't have the capacity for. What benefit is there for man to gain the whole world but lose his own soul? That's not good. That's a hippie idea that's far too grand. Most of us have difficulty making money, paying rent, and putting food on the table. We need someone who can bring the spiritual and the physical together harmoniously. Okay? Now, let me tell you a few things about, and remember the life of Jesus. God comes down to Mary and says, listen, you're going to be pregnant, but I haven't slept with Joseph, and God says, don't worry, I'm going to sleep with you. So God sleeps with Mary. The outcome is someone like Jesus. At the age of 12, without anything, any like knowledge, he intuits that he needs to leave, and he leaves. And he comes back and he gives us ideas that are far too difficult for people like you and I to live through and live by. Okay? Moses is a different story. Moses knows what power looks like. He is rich. Moses has fallen in love. He knows what love is. Moses is going to marry someone. He also knows what it means to be married. Okay? Moses lives amongst people, both the rich and the poor, the kings and the slaves. Okay? At a certain point, Moses has a hiccup. Someone goes to him and says, you are not who you think you are. Then Moses goes into the desert. Okay? He marries, but not for love. Okay, all those things were taken away from him once he came to realize that the world gives you an identity, but that identity is false. Then he comes back. When you read the 10 Commandments, especially the last 6, the first 4 are for people like Jesus. You know, only worship Yahweh. But who the hell can do that? No one. What's the second one? Make sure whenever you talk about God, your intentions are right. Don't defile his name. Who can do that? Okay? Keep Sabbath. Who can do that? Nobody. The last 6, on the other hand, they are meant for us. Respect your goddamn parents. Now that doesn't mean that your parents have not done you wrong. What it does mean, for me at least, the way I see it is the following. For those of us who become parents, unknowingly, all of a sudden you say, I am pregnant and I'm going to be a mom or I'm going to be a father. You have all these fantastic ideas. I'm going to be the best mom, best dad. I will have enormous amount of patience. I'm going to sacrifice everything I have for the well-being of my child. You have these ideas and they are beautiful. But then life gets in. You realize you're only human. You only have so much capacity for your kids' nonsense. And then you go nuts. Then you scream. Then you spank. Then you become mean. Then you realize, well, you have a crummy husband. Now you have to have 2 jobs, go to school, at the same time take care of your kids. And it's just too much on a human being. And then you break. Okay? So when you read the 5th commandment, respect thy parents, all parents have these noble ideas about parenting. It just, life gets in the way. Okay. So you have 2 kinds of teachers. You have a Jesus kind and you have a Moses kind. Which means that you have 2 kinds of students. You're going to have a certain kind of students who are going to gravitate towards someone like Jesus. They have the capacity to leave their wives, leave life, and follow him. I mean, look at the stories in the New Testament. Jesus runs into a fisherman whose name is Peter. He says, why are you wasting your time? Come follow me. I'm going to come follow you. Really, just like that? The answer is yes. Now, the story is not true because nobody in their right mind would ever do that, especially 2,000 years ago, because we're talking about 2,000 years ago, people live in shame cultures. Who you are depends on who you're with, and other people's opinion of you have a tremendous amount of importance. Okay? If, for example, you have a bad reputation in your town, you can't get a job. You can't get married. No one's going to talk to your parents because you're just a crummy human being. That's how it is 2,000 years ago. Okay? There are some people who are going to gravitate towards someone like Moses, very practical, very down to earth, has tasted life. Okay? Not only does Moses give you ways to live life, he also inspires you to look for the promised land. Okay? Now, whether your teacher happens to be a Jesus temperament or a Moses temperament, what they both have in common is students have no choice but to sit at their feet. Now, how you recognize a teacher is not intellectual, it's not reflective, it's intuitive. There is something about you. Like Spider-Man, your spidey senses will come to life and you say, I don't know why, but there is something about this person that I enjoy. Is it true that sometimes what he or she says rubs me the wrong way? Absolutely. But nevertheless, there is something about this person that I feel like I'm gravitating towards. It's intuitive. Okay? Now, once you have that experience, there is going to be this other part of you as a student, filled with doubt, skepticism. Do I really need to follow this person? Do I need to contact him? Do I need to see him? Do I need to sit at his or her feet and listen to his ramblings? Okay? So you're going to have a part of you as a student who is certain, that's certain. There's going to be a part of you that's filled with doubt and skepticism. Yeah.
On topic.
It's fine.
Do you believe that there's ever a point to following passion as a young person? Like, I know I've heard you speak about how you think you should have like a fallback and go through only go through those paths once you've educated yourself and you spend enough time where you can have something to fall back on and you can like, play with life or whatever. But if you had, say, enough dedication, enough passion for something where it overwhelms any desire or any will for you to pursue any of those things that would give you a fallback, and if you were to think there's any point to it?
So you have to, first of all, forgive me because I stopped listening to many other things that you said. As you were talking, it made me think about this 17-year-old kid who is playing for Barcelona. And he also, I think, is part of the, he plays for Spain. His name is Yamal. He's 17. He told his parents he's going to drop out of school, and they were upset because if you're interested in any sports and you want to go in it professionally, there's a huge competition. It's fierce, and you have to be really, really good, and it's very tricky. And remember, parents always worry about their kids. They're just very anxious. That's what it means to be a parent. You're always anxious about your kids' future, about who they're hanging out with, what they're smoking, where they're partying, all those things. At a certain point, Yamal says to his parents that, I'm just going to go pursue this. He got picked up by Barcelona. He's considered to be the next Lionel Messi, next Cristiano Ronaldo, next Pele. He's making millions of bucks. Is it true that some people can pursue their passion and be successful and make millions? Absolutely. One of the things about young people is that they're just passionate. I mean, look, the world that you live in is created by the adults. And it's not a fun world to be in. And when you look at the political world, the social world, and you say, this is what you adults made, I don't want to be part of it. There is this French playwright by the name of Jean Anouilh. He wrote his own version of Sophocles, his own version of Antigone, which initially was written by Sophocles, the Greek playwright. Um, in his version, Antigone looks at her father or her mom and says, and she's only 12. She says, I don't want to grow up and I don't want to be part of your world. I want to die at the age of 12 when I'm still a kid. I still have dreams and I'm innocent and I haven't been yet contaminated by the world of the adults. Can someone please end my life? Okay. And one of the nice things about the story is that when young people look at the world created by the adults, there is nothing to like. When you walk into the class, any class, my class, and you see me and I'm just rambling on about nonsense and I'm boring and I'm uninteresting, well, naturally, organically, you're going to say to yourself, why am I in school? Why do I want to be around instructors like this? They have nothing to offer. I am like bubbling with passion and inspiration, and this guy, what he's doing is killing every good thing that lives inside me. And so that inspires a good amount of passion, and it generates this idea that I want to go into life, but I don't want to become Amir Sabzavari, and I don't want to become my parents, and I don't want to become any of those adults all did because they all suck. I'd rather go into Yosemite and live my life there. And that's a great goal to have. Now, whether or not you can survive being in Yosemite for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, I don't really know, and you don't know either. It's a huge gamble. And I always go back to the 1960s and the hippie movement. And the hippie movement really is just about one thing. They hate war, they hate violence, they hate brutality and cruelty and racism. They hate everything that's just violence towards human beings. This mega bill that's being passed currently, that millions of people are going to lose healthcare. There is nothing to like about politics, and there is nothing to like about politicians. And as a young person, you say, you know what, I want to go into politics and create magic. Well, the only way you can actually create magic in the political world is to sleep with people who have money. And they'll buy you. Eventually, you'll be bought. It's just a matter of time. Okay? So, is it true that inside the soul of every young people there is this rebelliousness? Absolutely. Is it true that every young person wants to create a world that's empty of blemish and contamination? Definitely. Will you be successful? Time will tell. You're going against life, and life is powerful. The only way you can create a paradise for yourself is you get 20 people from this class, if you're like-minded, you buy a property in Nevada City, 20 acres, for about $200,000, and you guys live hopefully harmoniously there. But that's not going to happen because the human elements are going to be there. You may have a companion, but you're going to look at another human being and you're going to like him, and your companion is going to be jealous, and all of a sudden you have this disruption. And you have no idea what's going to happen to you when the alpha person in your community all of a sudden is intoxicated with power. What is that person going to do with power? Is he going to use it for the right reasons, wrong reasons? These are the unknowns that you have no idea. Now, given the fact that life is tough and no one really, and you're like a twig that eventually will break, you should always play it safe. Brokeback Mountain. It's a great, great, great movie. Brokeback Mountain is about, what is it about? It's about this guy. God made him gay. That's his orientation, and there is nothing wrong with him. But he lives in a culture that punishes him for who and what he is. And he does something fantastic. The lion and the lamb. He knows that the world is like a lion, devours him. He gets married. He has sex with his wife. He doesn't want to, but he has. He lives in society that he dislikes. He lives in it. At the same time, he knows that there is this lamb that lives inside him. It's innocent, it's creative. Once in a while, he gets in his car and goes 20 miles down the road. And he becomes a natural man, as Rousseau would say. he becomes who he is. Now that's the way you play the game. You just have to have a tremendous amount of awareness about you, that you understand your position in life, that you have one leg in paradise, another leg in hell. And somehow you have to survive it. I don't know if you're going to be another Yamal. I mean, nobody knows. I went into philosophy thinking, the reason I went to philosophy, my teacher gave me this book in Persian. 2,000 pages of dialogues of Plato in Persian. Beautiful. Then I read in English. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to do philosophy. Why? I fell in love with Socrates. I wanted to be Socrates. And then eventually I got a job. I went to a classroom and I opened my mouth and I realized I'm not Socrates. Don't even come close. Anyone else? That's it? Nothing? Yeah, Stephanie.
On the canvas, on the
Optional.
the optional,
Yeah.
do we get points for that, or no? If we choose to do the assignment, there's no point. Okay.
You just go there and you write because you're a Christian and you give without expecting anything back. You just give. I know it sounds awful. Yes, Olivia.
Do you have any thoughts on any other younger players?
No, they all look the same. I mean, there are only like a few stand out. I mean, if you look at Lakers, for example, you don't go see the Lakers because you love all the players. You go there because of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You go there because of Kobe Bryant or Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan. I mean, there's only one person who stands out, maybe two if you're lucky in a team. Barcelona a couple of years ago, they had Messi, Mbappe, and a few other people, all these like stars, So the point I'm trying to make, in America, you have like a Malcolm X. In India, you have a Gandhi. In the entire Saudi Arabia, you have like a Muhammad. Very few. Yeah, so there are only few who stand out. The rest are just trash. But you need the trash. I mean, Martin Luther needs blind followers. He needs people who don't reflect so he can inspire them and create a movement. So even people like us who are no good at anything, we generate, inside us, a spark is generated by a Malcolm X. Then we walk into the streets, scream for justice. That's the only thing we're good for. There's nothing else about us that's useful. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, Elijah.
You put your recordings on YouTube because you can monetize it.
No, I don't. That's a really, really good question. But I will tell you a story. So yesterday, I parked the car in the faculty slots, and I've seen the security guard, this African American, really nice man, and we usually shake hands and we talk for a few minutes. And he says, Amir, tomorrow is going to be my last day. Why? Where are you going? I asked for a 50-cent raise and they didn't give it to me. So I went with another company who's willing to pay me for an extra like $4. I said, good for you. She says, yeah, they're going to feel the pain. I'm going to be missed. I said, okay, yeah, you'll be missed. As I'm walking to my office, I say to myself, you're not going to be missed. Nobody really gives a shit. So I had a student who was 17 at the time at Sierra College, Cassie Lipowitz. A couple years ago, she said, Amir, if you record your classes, then maybe I can put them on YouTube. And it was a time where I was writing a lot about death. And as your parents are getting older and as people in your community are kind of passing away because of sickness or just old age, you naturally just gravitate towards, imagining your own death eventually. And so thinking that, eventually you're going to die, and then you're going to leave some people behind, namely your kids. And my wife will eventually remarry probably, and whatever. Kids are slightly different because you want to leave them something that you think is of value. So I said, well, my kids, they're young and they're far too stupid to understand these ideas and how valuable these ideas really are, at least the way I see them and feel about them. So what can I leave for them so that just in case they get into a difficult position in life, maybe they'll say, well, maybe I should listen to one of my dad's recordings. Maybe he has something interesting to say. And so, considering death, considering my kids, their future, the difficulties of life, and Cassie's suggestion, I said, yeah, why not? So that's the reason why they're there. Yeah. And you don't really make money. I haven't seen a dime. I think you make money when you are like a Cristiano Ronaldo, when you have like a few million followers of those things. And you have to sell yourself. You have to sell like a Jordan Peterson. You really have to kind of. Anyways, yeah. So, anyone else? No one? Saraya? Okay, so. Do we have like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so I can finish the Hindus? We can do. Okay, so let me just finish up Hinduism in a very callous way. So the way things work with teacher-student relationship is the following. First, it revolves around this thing called bhakti. Forget that, it just means you have a very intimate relationship with your teacher, i.e., you fall in love with your teacher. It's very much like a romantic relationship. The only difference between a romantic relationship with some Joe Schmo and a romantic relationship with a teacher is that if you were paying attention, your relationship with a boyfriend, for example, is like going to a gas station and visiting the mini mart. That's the depth of your relationship with your boyfriend. And there is nothing wrong with it. You'll probably get married and have children and live a happy life, for the next 50, 60 years. The relationship you'll have with a teacher is like falling in love with a Costco, because teachers usually have a tremendous amount of depth. They're unreachable, they're untouchable, and therefore your point of satisfaction is delayed by 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The deeper you love, the more delay is going to be in your getting bored or satisfied. Okay? One of the best books, again, I'll repeat, for those of you in this class who want to kind of understand how this works, is a book that came out in the 1980s, Daughter of Fire. Irina Tweedy goes to India, falls in love with this man, and devotes her life to this man for about 10 years. Okay? Now, for one of the difficulties with the American culture is because there are no narratives, there are no like real, deep, healthy, spiritual narratives about the teacher and a student relationship. Oftentimes what usually happens is students actually imagine that they're romantically in love with the spiritual teacher. Okay? Now, for you to become a spiritual teacher, if you happen to be a Moses, you're very much attached to life and everything that life offers you. When you go on your spiritual quest, you do so because you become detached from your life. The reason you're detached from life is because life can no longer inspire you, excite you, give you anything that's relevant to you, meaningful to you. Okay? So it's usually a one-sided relationship. Now, once you have taken the bait and you have fallen in love with your teacher, what happens is you enter the next stage, which is called yana. Now, one of the things that comes after these names is yana yoga or bhakti yoga. Yoga basically means that you merge with your teacher. You become one with your teacher. His will ultimately becomes yours. Now, one of the things that I usually like to say is that spiritual teachers are never women because they're no good. They must always be a man. Always. I'm just going to leave it at that. Now, sorry? I just said I'm just going to leave it at that. Now that, for the most, there's a lot of bias on my part because most of the literature that I've been exposed to have been written by men, about men. Part of it really has to do that the Middle Ages, there were lots of spiritual female teachers, but the only way they could write and were allowed to have their writings published is by having a man's name on it. Okay. Also, there is something about the psychology of women that doesn't allow them to be very good teachers in the spiritual tradition. I'm not talking about academics, okay? That there are things or stages that men have to go through. Men have to lose a lot of things. Men have to go through a lot of depression, dark moments, and they have to overcome them. You know, they have to be kind of baptized by fire, you know. I'm sorry? Yeah, they have to be burnt. Like someone needs to like blowtorch them. No, women, they don't have to go through hell. I mean, if you're talking about metaphoric hell, yes, they have to go through that. Look, it's like let's say you were married and then it was all about romance and love. Time passes, things don't work out, you divorce. And women do this really well, which is they get really sad, they get really depressed, they lose a lot of hope. I mean, life just steals them. They get depressed. At a certain point, they begin to examine their relationship. And then they go out after they've been healed, and they begin to ask all the right questions. And then you go out with the right man, and the man sits there and says, wow, these are really great questions. Did you like read them in a book? You say, no. I went into my first marriage being stupid, and because I was stupid, the marriage dissolved, I divorced. He left me or I left him. And then I went through depression for about 10 years. And in those 10 years, I began to think, and I began to feel, and I began to really learn how to ask the right questions. But those 10 years, you went through hell. You know, you had to be okay with being the first one in your family divorced, you know, feeling the betrays, feeling that how stupid you are and how you could do this to yourself. And you have to go through all those emotional crises until you become insightful and wise. And that's metaphoric hell. You know, Jesus Christ doesn't need to come down and visit you. You just visit yourself and your experiences. So, where was I? Yeah, that's right. Women are no good. Now, on the spiritual, what happened? Anyways, so first, you love your teacher. Now, one of the things that love does, it makes you passive. When you become passive, you become open. When you become open, you just receive. And when you're in the receiving mode, The next stage is yana, which means that the wisdom or the insights of your teacher now go inside. You accept without question. And you need that. Is it true that like Gilgamesh and Enkidu, you begin to wrestle? Yeah, you wrestle initially. But once you fall in love, there is no more wrestling. Now, one of the things you need to understand about the teacher-student relationship is the following. The very physical presence of your teacher impacts you tremendously. He doesn't need to talk. He doesn't need to say anything. The moment you walk into his house, something happens to you psychologically, emotionally, even spiritually. Okay? Now, it is true that sometimes your teacher is counterfeit and fake. It doesn't matter. If you fall in love with the devil, you will be a poet. Many of us in this class have fallen in love with all the wrong people. But is it not true? We grew in patience? Yes. Is it not true we grew in generosity? Yes. Did we not become a poet? Yes. Okay? So when you fall in love, something about you changes. Okay? Now, the other thing you need to know about what we call wisdom or insight, as the student hears, for the student, insights and wisdoms of the teacher are nothing but data and information. A student is never at a position to understand. The student is only at a position to feel, not understand, only feel. You can only read the life or the story of Jesus and feel, but you have no idea what it means to leave your parents at the age of 12. You have no idea what it means to carry the sins of the world on your shoulder. It sounds good, it's exciting, inspirational, but you're never close to understanding what Jesus actually understood. We can only feel. Okay? Which means that should you ever find yourself becoming a student of a teacher, don't go in there assuming tonight I'm going to understand. It's not going to happen. The only thing you will do is feel and feel intensely and deeply. And that's going to trouble you. And the more you feel, the more intimate you're going to feel towards your teacher. And the more you get closer to your teacher, the further you will get from your life. Okay? The next stage is what we call Dharma yoga. And is it Dharma? Maybe. You guys gotta Google this stuff. Your teacher is going to make demands of you. Be at my house at 6. You gotta read this book. And just in case you say the wrong thing, he'll look at you and say, don't be stupid. Now, most of the things that I'm saying right now has to do with my own relationship with the teacher I had for about 10 years. Okay? As you grow closer to your teacher, there is a great space between you and the rest of your life. You have no parents, no siblings, no brothers, no sisters, and you will want to get into romantic relationships, but none of them are going to work out. Why? Because these ideas create big questions. Now, one of the things that happens to you as a student, as you go deeper into these ideas, is that something happens to you as a student. You begin to ask these questions, your body language, your facial expression, everything about you begins to change. You become attractive. That attractiveness about you now gives you power. Now, if nobody wanted to be around you, now you have a lot of people around you. They like you because of the questions. They like you because of just the way you feel. What other people don't know is that you just have a big mouth, you have big ideas, but you have no idea what you're talking about. But those people don't really just know that yet. Okay? So you begin to abuse the hell out of them. Most of my male students, what usually happens to them is they go to school, they get their masters, they come back to Laney, and they begin to teach, and they just act crazy. Women aren't like that. My female students have never been like that. But male students, they just become trash for a long, long time. And it takes them, hopefully, maybe the next 2 decades for them to kind of be tamed and domesticated. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's good. Yeah, whatever.
Did I say it right?
Yeah, you said it right. Is it time to go? What time is it?
It's 8:30. That's like that.
Why are you guys up and what the hell is wrong with you people? Anyway, so it's good to see you. Well, we're done with Hindus. We'll do the Buddhists tomorrow. Yeah, we'll try at least. Have a nice evening.
So if I want to go back again, do I just email you?
Yeah, just email me. Yeah. Thank you, Olivia.